Welcome to my regular monthly broadcast in Conversation with Extraordinary Women. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my good friend, Fiona Arrigo, tonight to join me. Fiona is a psychotherapist, an intuitive healer, mentor, life teacher, wise woman in general, in every sense of the word. And I am thrilled to have you here. And I thought what would be really nice tonight, somebody who, of course, you do speak, but you're also listening a lot to others, is for me to find out and listen to you and ask you questions about your journey. And as we talked about the other day, how you arrived here. So one of the quotes that you said, which I used on our flyers for tonight, which I love, is when we heal ourselves, we heal the collective. And that obviously is very true. And I'm sure we all believe that. But what do you want to explain that a bit further from your perspective? You
Yeah.
said it.
Well, first of all, can I just say thank you for inviting me on here live? And it's so nice to sit down with you and have a cup of tea, actually.
Oh, you've got a
And
cup of tea. Very
so,
good.
um, this is the age of cleanup. This is the age of transparency. This is the age of authenticity, all the words that you know, plus your community. But it is about, in this new Aquarian way, of how our collective humanity, how we work together, and how our individual lives, that, so many of us in part of these bygone years have been robbed of esteem, have been robbed of value. And even though it can look from the neck up that we could be confident and goal setters and getting things, we have to also understand that the feminine itself has been disempowered. And as this energy starts to come back to the collective for the group healing, this is also where we reclaim our power and our wisdom, our inner authority. And the more we decalcify, the more we detoxify, the more we unhook from all the stories that we've been told that aren't necessarily the truth for today. It's not to say that stories that were said bygone were not valuable at that time. I don't want to discuss that. I don't want to get into politics. But what I do believe fervently in my heart is we are classical, the ones we've been waiting for. It is our individual lives that will help with this shift. And we are the change makers. We are the custodians.
And
So
by we, you're talking women, I assume. I mean, I know that your work over the years has been with men and women, but right now you seem to be focusing much more on women, which, as you know, of course, I've been doing for a long
yeah,
while, because it's our time now.
it
So
is.
the wise
It is.
women.
Yeah, but it's obviously it's not. Women have this knowledge. It's intrinsically wrapped into them. Women, whether or not in this lifetime we give birth, we know how to give birth. We are the bloodline of our great grandmothers and our grandmothers. We know how to hold the threads of feeding family, being in community, all these things. These are written into us as females. And so we are perhaps at this point in time holding this activation more strongly for the
Yeah.
collective.
But again, I guess not always generalizing, because there are some beautiful men out there.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I've had two conversations in the last 48 hours, one with a politician, and one with a broadcaster, a media TV broadcaster, and both said that their worst moments in their careers have been with other women, which I find very, very sad. It really hurts my heart to hear that. And that's quite current, that there are still a lot of women out there that feel highly competitive and as if they need to live their lives according to the old paradigm and behave like more like, not like men. I can't say they behave like men. They behave like very aggressive women, very
Yeah,
unsupportive, aggressive
but
women, which is
yeah,
very sad
but
indeed.
I think that women that are not in their wake up are often much more aggressive than men, and are
Mm,
often much more manipulative,
mm,
and using, because of the smartness and the capacity to use all these intelligences that they've got access to, and also
yes.
because we're coming out of a battleground of women not being given power and everything that we know about. But what you said something before about, and I think this time requires a lot of patience and steadiness and understanding, because we can't all wake up. It's a process on different levels for different times and different moments. So of course we're going to see some hideous behavior throughout our world, and some of it can be being born. We're coming out of ignorance. And so everything that goes with ignorance into the age of enlightenment, into the age of light, into the age of compassion, into the age of consciousness. But it's this process that takes time, and it's on the evolutionary ladder. And, as much as we know, its first stab at it is 2,500 years. It's not like patterns are going to disappear overnight.
Yes, but so encouraging how many young women, and I mean very young in some cases. Your daughter, my granddaughter's 17, and she's totally switched on and aware.
Absolutely.
And that's so encouraging, because it is obviously that they are the future, and they are the generation to come. And our role is to be there and hold that space for them.
And give them the voices and the encouragement that often we didn't get, because we had to battle. We had to battle to come through this.
Well, my mother was very spiritual and very supportive and ran the family because my father was sick. My grandmother also had a sick husband and was very strong and creative. And as far as I understand, my great-grandmother likewise. That's as far as I've gone back. So I'm very fortunate that I come from a strong line of matriarchal women who had to take care of their families and who also followed a spiritual line. I see it in my daughter, I see it in my granddaughters, and I didn't really have to battle, because I was in the fashion industry, which on the whole was full of women and gay men mostly.
But that must have been a battle.
No.
I mean, the fashion industry way back then. No,
it wasn't. It was very tribal, and I was working with all these wonderful then young designers like Vivienne Westwood and Catherine Hamnert and Jasper Conran, fantastic people, and we were friends, we were mates, we used to hang out all the time. I wouldn't like to be part of it now, but in those days it was very social, lots of parties. On Sunday, I've got a reunion Zoom with a lot of the people who used to work for me in the PR agency back in the day, 30, 40 years ago. And we've had a couple of these already, and just remembering what fun we had. It was fun. We were always having fun. No, I haven't experienced the battle. I got asked that the other day, back in one of these conversations with Hattie Webb, and she was talking about being in the music industry and how it had been a battle, and she always felt she had to defend herself. I'm very fortunate, not being smug, just extremely grateful, extremely grateful. Anyway, let's start with you and your journey and your arrival, because you told me the other day about some very intense experiences you had that took you on this journey, which I actually didn't even know about. I still don't know about, really. You just mentioned them. So over to you and your journey, Fiona, how you got here.
Well, it all began many moons ago. And I think as a little girl, I was born with certain realizations, for sure. And like in my experience, like many of us, it got dumbed down and shut out and forgotten. And I lived a very enjoyable, pleasurable, hedonistic life. And I thought about this today when you said you were going to ask me something. And I thought, how could I just snapshot this super quickly? And I could say, 1 minute I was sitting on a stool in Knightsbridge having a vodka and tonic, boom. And the next minute I was on my back in hospital, unconscious. And really what happened just on my Saturn returns, I had 2 very serious car accidents. One was in Malta, where I was living with my husband. I was run over, hit by a car. I went through the windscreen. I was basically in hospital for 1.5 years and had to learn to walk again. I had my first wake up, strong wake up, when I was just kind of in that in-between state for about a month to 6 weeks, whether they didn't know if I was going to live or die. I started to have my first awakenings. And I remember when I was from the first car accidents, when I was in hospital, and I could feel this force, but I had no understanding of it. I was a little fashionista, you know, walking down, probably trying to buy the clothes you were selling. You know, I wasn't interested. The spirit to me was in the glass, you know, and and so I was having all these very intense, very sacred experiences, and I kept asking doctors, nurses, friends that were coming in to sit around my bed, what's happening, and they kept saying it's the drugs, or you're on this, or you're on that, you know, just enjoy it. But it was the beginning where I began to see through the cracks. And then, as if that wasn't enough, I came out of hospital in November after being in hospital, as I said, for a year and a half, and I had a second crash that broke in Africa, that
Oh
broke
my
every other
God.
bit of my body. And then that was a real nosedive into, I mean, the first one kind of lifted me up, and the second one really brought me down. But from that point, I went on this really magical journey where the most incredible teachers used to just find me. I mean, it's all in the hands of great mystery. I was found by incredible teachers, and I went into this in 16 years of very deep apprenticeship with some very profound yogis and Tibetan mystics and various things. So it began sort of there, or let's say when I was about 30, I shifted from one world radically into another world, and I undid myself in every single way, and and then started to work inwardly. And from that, you know, everything else grew.
Hmm. And you created the Arrigo program. Was that about 30 years ago? That was
Yeah,
a
the
while.
first version of that was something called um, Stop the World, which was the first alternative health farm in
Yeah.
England. And it was a bit like Faulty Towers because, you know, it was, I did it with my best friend and well, two of my best friends, yoga teachers. So we were teaching, cooking, laughing, you
Where
know,
was it?
in Somerset, in Hornblower.
Oh, oh, really?
And so in 1 minute we were like teaching out in the front, all good things in the background, scrubbing loos and getting, you know, peeling potatoes and then coming out. It was the most fantastic initial experience of community. And I feel like many of us, I was born, even though I was estranged from it in my life, even though I had also a wonderful relationship with my grandmother, my Irish grandmother, but I was always searching for community. I was always searching for tribe. So, but the Arrigo program began through Stop the World. It then became The Time Is Now, and now it's the Arrigo program.
And I didn't realize you've been in Somerset that long. So you're almost a neighbour of mine. You're in Castle
I'm
Kerry where
down
you
the
hold your
road.
retreat.
Though we never see
Yeah,
each other, but yes.
not during this. No, it's ridiculous. Anyway, but you're in London. You've still got your place. Is it called Place to Heal?
Yeah, we've got our sister companies in London called A Place to Heal. And
Yeah.
I took a break from being in Somerset. I think I arrived down here when my, you know, maybe I can only go by my kids, maybe 25 years ago. But then I went to Ireland, which is my kind of mother's side of the family, when my daughter was born, and I stayed in Ireland for 7 years. So off and on for 30 odd years in Somerset.
And you're also a great friend of another friend of, well, we have a mutual friend, Rita Jerez, who
Yes,
has been.
I'm wearing Rita Jerez. Yes.
What am I wearing? No, I'm wearing a pink shop, but actually I wear a lot of Rita Jerez.
I know.
Love her clothes and love her teachings.
Yeah.
And let us not forget that I can't remember how long ago, 2 years maybe. In fact, Louise Allen, who's on this call, was here actually then. And you, myself, Rita, and Stella and Stella Fett. I can't. Oh, anyway, I'll come back to that. Yes. We had a conversation. I asked us all to get together, and I said, there's going to be a time when we're going to need to start working together. And this was, of course, pre-COVID, pre lots of things, actually. And we were just talking. We spent a weekend together talking about the fact that it was the time of the wise woman, and it was going to be very necessary for us women of certain experiences and certain, let's hope, wisdom from those experiences, good and bad, to see what we can do collectively. And I think for both of us, this whole idea of collective collaboration, and how we can come together in a new way is very important. And do you want to elaborate a bit on that? Because I know that's something you also feel
I
strongly
think
about.
that this is, it is the age of us working together and collaborating. It is the age of supporting each other. It is the age of, non bitching about each other, removing the poisoned arrows from each other. The age of having conversation, rather than, consumerism. There's so many changes that are going on that we're part of. And the wealth of our knowledge now, in our elder years, I think that there's an importance in these times for all of us. I mean, I think what's beautiful at the moment, and I certainly see it in my communities, is, I have age ranges from 25 to 75, and everybody works together when I do communities, events and things like that. And I think there's something very beautiful about, as we return to the sacredness of the earth, as we come back to our original blueprint, as we come back to reverence, as we come back to honoring. But I do think the importance for this time is steadiness, because there's so much rebirth and there's so much that is being dehooked as we find our own alignments, and say, without being, I would say, we're not revolutionaries, we're evolutionaries. It's how,
Same thing.
you
It's
know
true.
how do we walk peacefully on this earth while it's she herself, the earth, is transmuting and changing, and we with her are. And I think the beauty of the wisdom of the grandmother is that she can really hold steady. And I do think that steadiness is very much called for this time.
Yes, because of course, none of us ever could have predicted that we would be going through this whole COVID lockdown, fear run world that we're in, literally from day to day. Some other dreadful news now. India is burning. I mean, it's just horrific. A few weeks, 2 weeks ago, it was the Amazon, our most sacred places, and the people that guard that are the guardians for those sacred places are suffering terribly. And as this happens all around us at the same time, it is very clear that we can move onto, I don't know if there'll ever be another side of COVID, probably with us forever, some form or another, but we can move through this collectively to
Yeah.
create new and to create the vision of how we want the world to be. And it's something I talk about a lot in my community. It's something that I'm sure you do too, is what could this future look like? We know that we want to bring in more conscious behavior, whether it's in consumerism or how our well-being, how we work together, community. How could this new world look? What is the vision? And I really pass that over to you. What's your vision for
Well, of
how this world
course,
could be?
I think this is incredibly important, because one of the sins is that we were cut away from our dream body. We were cut away from our imagining. We were cut away from the possibility to come into something that we knew in our wombs, that we knew in our hearts, and it has been severed. And I think that there's so much to say about this, because I think also that there has been a rupture and interference in consciousness, where we have been cut off from the sky, where we have been cut off from the earth. And we are, as custodians, as all nations, reclaiming that softly, heart by heart, hand by hand, shoulder to shoulder. So, in the part of the great Tibetan teachings, they talk about the Kali Chakra, and the Kali Chakra being the age, the golden age, the age where everything is working in harmony, and where animals are treated fairly, where everything is evenly distributed. And I think in some part of our soul dialogue, this is what we're all looking for in some ways. But the point is how. And I think, many of us can get disillusioned because we see the path ahead, the path that has often been painful and difficult, and we have been cut off from pleasure and well-being and, healthy endorphins, and we've been under this stronger matrix of, the love of power rather than the power of love. and divisiveness and divide and conquer. So the first stage has to be, which is why I say it's our individual lives that affect the whole, has to be the reclaiming of that internal balance, that internal ecology, how we treat our body coherently, how we treat the outside world. Is it in balance? You know, are you being nice to Aunt Jemima and running yourself ragged? Are you detoxing, retoxing? You know, we're laden with self-harming toxicity. And so we have to, which we're all doing, is clearing out in whichever way we can to do our best to get as clean as we can, one step at a time. My greater vision, if I fast forward into 2,500 years, 3,500 years, is we've reclaimed non-violence. We've reclaimed a regeneration of heart and land. We've reclaimed the living prayer, that we are light, prayerful beings, not toxic, laden, greedy, sex trafficking, child abusing, money marketing, you know, and this is why this particular moment I think is so strong, because we're getting, I don't know how many people you've got online here, but you know, we are getting now to really make these choices. Where do we spend our money? What food do we want? Do we have conscious sex? Are we having conscious birth? Are we choosing conscious dying? You know, more and more as the purification starts and runs, and again, none of us are naive. The purification isn't pretty. This, you know, something had to give. Was that Jack Nicholson? Something had to give.
Yeah.
Something
Great
had
job.
to give.
Yeah.
I know we love Frankie and whatever they're called. Frankie, I can't even remember her name, but you know,
My favorite,
Grace and
Grace,
Frankie.
Grace and Frankie.
But the thing is that something had to give in order for us to somehow grab enough energy to create a silence so that we could think and reframe and regroup. This was the entering for me of COVID. So I don't see, even though of course I see the negative spin, I see COVID actually as a messenger of light, because it allowed us to go into, as I said right at the beginning, you know, Mother Nature's waiting room. We were put right back in March and April. I don't know if you all remember, but there was a moment when the world went really, it was so quiet. It's not like this lockdown of this year. It was quiet. The world went quiet.
No play, hear the birds. And
you could hear the birds, everything, but also it was in this quietness, like sometimes in the collective initiation, you know, of course, the big ones are the big guns, Jesus, the Buddha, you know, the smaller ones are Gandhi, or, you know, when something happens, or you could even say Princess Diana, when something happens, there's suddenly a collective shift and a different moment. And this one with COVID affected everybody, no one, even though, of course, people in power could twang around it. But nevertheless, this COVID really, nobody was removed from it. And thus, we've had a chance to come into that, what we say esoterically is the planet itself is taking its first initiation. And that means that as together as a group. So what do I envisage for the future? I envisage that we come into a world that is balanced, a world that has equanimity, a world that really stands for care, that really stands for win-win, all these things that, you know, every single woman on this could make a sentence around it.
Yes, or even a one-worder.
But it is the collective togetherness that we all aspire to dream together. We agree to turn up to reimagine a new world. We, you know, this is what will happen. And you know, when you're in service, you don't do it for outcome. You just do it because you want to do it. You just want to commit your life to a better world for all our future generations. And goodness knows what these young ones, they could completely, you know, we have enough technology and wisdom and money and firepower and abundance to completely shift all this. We know this. But
there is enough food for every single person on this planet.
Exactly.
And they're starving in the most terrible ways. Yes.
Exactly. And we can't stand for it. This is what happens as the woman's body wakes up naturally, not from a position, and there's room for that. Of course, there's room to stand on a box and say no, 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 and you know, to fight the cause. But I believe as the woman comes back to her natural vibration, her natural instincts, her natural knowingness, she will just not cross the line anymore. She will say no. And this is what's happening in your community and all the communities around the world. We're
Yes.
not fighting, we're just saying no more.
Yes.
And this is
Yes.
the age of no more. And to empower our children to say no more. And, you know, and to, you know, look at what we're throwing out as rubbish. Look at, you know, we have to move into this age of consciousness.
Yeah.
First
Well,
base.
you know, yeah, absolutely. Even in this little town, just when you were talking about what we're doing with our rubbish, I was thinking of Bootmakers, which is the business opposite me, for those of you who know it and you've been here, where they teach children how to make art from rubbish. And
Yep.
they have just reopened, thank goodness. And it's just it's very inspirational how many communities, small communities, are making change in their own ways. Even here,
Absolutely.
rewilding, planting seeds, getting the kids to learn how to grow their own vegetables. You know, it is a time for teaching. I noticed, which I've never noticed before, that you refer to biodynamic psychotherapy as part of what you teach. Well,
It's
that's what I heard online.
what I was trained in, you know, 100 years ago.
Is that to do with Steiner?
No, it's not. It's to do with some clinical work developed by an amazing psychoanalyst in Sweden about 60, 70 years ago. And she was the mother,
yeah.
the mother of the brain, heart, gut connection, the grandmother of this. But biodynamic is the movement of life and how the flow of life, brain, gut, soul, cells.
Connects. And learning, I guess, I suppose part of that is about learning how to listen to our body, not just our mind brain, but our brain, our intuition, our brain in our gut, our brain in our heart, our brain in every area of our body, I guess, where we
Absolutely.
can feel. And we've lost that ability through being bombarded. I mean, we're online now, but being bombarded by so much technology and things and buying and the world as it was. I mean, as awful as COVID and this whole pause has been for certainly for many, it has been so necessary. I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If we didn't stop, we would have exploded. We're still on the edge. I mean,
Yeah.
we still, as much as the women on this call and the women in your tribe and the women we know are conscious and encouraging and holding the space for other men, women, boys, and girls to become one with this new understanding, it is still time where the balance is very like this and could still go either way. There is still a huge amount of greed. There's still a huge amount of talk about money, money, money. And for what? How much is enough? And now these billionaires are talking about going off to Mars because it's safe there. I mean, what for? I have been a few times into Clubhouse. I don't know if you've gone into Clubhouse yet. And I mean,
I've
it
been
is
invited, yeah, I was invited last week.
some of the conversations, I guess. But it's generally the ones that have got hundreds and hundreds of people in their rooms are all talking about how to make more money, how to make more money. It's
But
young
it's
people.
embedded, you know, and this is where we need love, expansion, knowledge, and tolerance, because this is an embedded evil. This is anti-life. Greed, annihilation, divisiveness, taking the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, this inequality. And it has to be allowed also to take its time. This isn't going to, however many amazing conscious women there are, and I love that expression,
Of course.
you know, we're working to get more and more and more and more and more. And as you said earlier, that we're not responding necessarily from the brain intellect, we're responding from the body's knowing, which is connected to our earth, which is connected to an intelligence, and will also help us to navigate. But if we don't do this COVID, post-COVID thing of really pause, stop, reset, listen, in our day. And, you know, you and I and many of us, you know, I'm so busy at this minute,
All
but I
right.
have to make it's crazed actually.
Yeah.
But I have to make sure I stop and I disconnect and I feel and come back to this, my own alignment. So as many times, and I know you're a great chanter and you've got a very powerful spiritual practice, but you know, there is no other way but down and in embodiment. And that's what we need. You know, this is what's coming, this rooted, earthy, intelligent wisdom that carries the memory code, you know, carries the memory code that's in the water, that's in the fires, that's in the nature, that's in the trees. And we forgot, you know, some of us may have known how to look, but most of us have been dashing down, you know, I mean, the beauty, I mean, you know, I don't watch the news. Normally, my beloved, you know, when he's here, gives me little crash pad bits of what's going on. And he said when lockdown lifted slightly the other day, apparently there were just hordes of people dashing to malls, dashing to shops.
Mm.
That's where the energy was going.
Yes, a very long queue outside Primark, I understand.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. That's
there is a sort of totally illogical pattern of events that keep going on. As much as you're absolutely right, I'm with you every step of the way, and I'm sure everybody on this call is, that it's about grounding ourselves, walking without our shoes in the in Mother Earth, and giving and feeling and giving gratitude for the
yeah.
wonderful gifts that are around us. There is this whole other kind of rushing back to the old, and it's confusing, and yet there's still a lot of fear. I mean, I again can see it here. You know, there's when I see people walking around with masks on the beach and out in fresh air, and you know, there are a lot of people that have bought into tremendous amount of fear, and that worries me a lot.
Loss of mind. You know, again, it takes a lot of energy to reclaim your mind. You
Mm,
know, we think just because people are intelligent that they've got their minds, but their minds are hooked into it. These are probably people that are running around with masks that aren't even thinking in fear. They're just this overlay of conditioning of being deprived of being able to question when we haven't been brought up to question. We've been
mm,
brought up to obey and follow rules. And that's kind of old age. And now, as we come into new age Aquarian living, it just can't stand. It is about everybody's inner evolution to find their own way. And we
mm.
will, you know, of course, there's masked up and vaccinated people and all these other things. But I think that we need, as elders, to have compassion for this.
Mm.
You know,
I agree.
it can't be like, you know, they're in fear or they've got a mask or they've got a vaccine, because then we're just doing exactly the same. Sorry, I can't get my body heating right. They then we're doing exactly the same as before. We're not, you know, we shouldn't, it's good not to point fingers and say people are wrong, but it's important to have discernment to know what is right or wrong for you.
I would never. Everyone has to make their own decision and their own choice in every way. But I did interview, which is my next podcast, the wonderful Stella Creasy, who is an MP. She's the one MP that well, there are a few others, but she's the one MP I have phenomenal respect for. She's an activist and a feminist, and she says what she thinks, and she's a campaigner, a radical campaigner. So I had a big conversation with her yesterday, which we are putting out as a podcast on the 3rd of May, which is fascinating. And there are things going on right now because of the situation that we're in. For example, there is no debate. I hadn't appreciated that because the MPs are all on Zoom. There is no debate in the House of Commons. And if they want to put a law through, it kind of goes through. And some of the laws that are going through about curtailing our freedom, or there's one covert law, I don't want to talk about it too much before the podcast, but that actually is allowing it to be legal to have children spying on
What?
society, yes, community, that the police are allowed to have children and the Secret Services to encourage children to spy for them in different situations. Anyway,
Oh,
it's this whole thing we're
that's
coming up with next week. But
outrageous.
it's just, when you start having these conversations with other people that are, worlds that I'm not in,
Yes.
find out what's going on. It's like, my goodness me, which is even more reason why it is so important for the wise women to hold the space together. And I can see on my list so many wise women on this call tonight that I know and love. And oh, some wonderful comments. One comment I will say from the lovely Louise Allen, who has three beautiful sons, three, right? Not four, three, is that we mustn't forget that the real masculine is to hold the divine feminine to flourish. And of course, we have to. You have a son and a daughter. I have 5 grandsons and 3 granddaughters. I mean, it's going to be the young wisdom from the young boys, the young girls.
And
together.
These young men that are coming up and through are just astonishing, really astonishing. I mean, this is the beauty when we look at, this evolution. Yes, we can look outside, and I'm shocked at what you said. It's like being a Nazi general.
I was shocked. I was sitting here yesterday on my Zoom talking to Stella with my mouth open. I mean, I knew about it because I've been reading it up, all the campaigns she's involved in, but even so, hearing it, firsthand, it's like, what?
This is again, it's the shabbiness, the debris, the everything that hasn't been wholesome and good. And as we get, as we, the workers, the light weavers, the thread weavers, step into our own power, and
yes.
as we progress and begin to join in fifth dimensional expanded wisdom, which is love as a vibration, not as an emotion. And the more we get to that level, we have to believe. What do I believe in? I believe in the power of one. I believe that as many of us come together and sing a new song and dream a new dream, no matter what, and keep with it, even in the days where you meet things like you've just met and your heart crashes or your tummy turns, we have to come back to reimagining a new future. We have to.
We have to. And even such a Stella is imagining the new future, and she's out there in the front line.
Out there doing the work. Yeah.
But we have to all come up with this conversation. I'm just looking at some of the other wonderful comments that have been put here. Bobo is saying wonderful nature coming back to life, and Manetta Viegas, who was for many years, is still very close with the Brahma Kumaris, who I'm also very close with, which reminded me when you were talking about what we call the golden age in the Brahma Kumaris, how it will be that time. And so she's saying, Fiona, wow, what amazing wisdom keeper you are. She could listen for hours, blown away. And interestingly, also, Nettie, I had a long conversation, and Fiona and everybody else, I had a long conversation with Sister Maureen Goodman, who is one of the Brahma Kumari leaders in this country, who is going to be my next guest here on these conversations in a couple of weeks, or one of my podcasts. And it's a very, very interesting organization. I'm sure you've come across them. So just because Nettie's here, it just makes me want to say that the Brahma Kumaris have been the only really female-led spiritual organization of any size ever out of India. And the wonderful Daddy Janki, who passed away last year at 104, was sort of leading it worldwide. And I learned so much from her about what this feminine spirituality looks like, almost, dare I say, feminist spirituality looks like. And they had last week on a year's memorial service for Daddy Janki that I was invited to online, of course. And it just took me straight back to, again, her wisdom. And again, the wisdom of so many women who have been there for many, many, many generations, taking us to this point. And I don't know about you, Fiona, and I'm sure all these other fantastic women I can see on the call. It's like we've been in training somehow all these years. I mean, what happened to you with your accidents that then took you on your journey, what's happened to me in my life, in the journey I've been on, and I think for many of us, is we have been in training. It's like we chose
Absolutely.
to be born. Do you not agree?
Absolutely. We're born for these times. We know how to do it, and that we have to hang on to that, because all of us have turned up as a tribe right now in this huge planetary transition. And it's written into our, if you want to say your DNA or your blood, we know how to do this. We
Yes.
really know, soft touch, warrior hearts. We know how to do this. But again, we can only do it together. It's not singular. And this is the beauty now from all the forging of all the women that have, never given up, never gave up on their voices, sacrificed so much. And we're now jumping off their backs jumping into their hearts to create a new future.
Yes.
So yes, we've been trained. Yes, we are the ones we have been waiting for. Yes, we know how to do this. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's not going to change overnight.
And yes, we cannot do it on our own. We can only
And
do it
yes, we
together.
cannot do it on our own.
Yes. Aho, says Alexis Smith. Absolutely.
Hello, aho to you, Alexis.
Aho.
Aho.
So some of the things I also wanted to talk to you about, because we've actually unbelievably gone already 40 minutes on, but we did say once we started chatting, it would come out. It's also I thought we would examine the change to the narrative of our own lives. It's something that I work with a lot, and I know you do, is how we can change that narrative. We've talked about knowing in our DNA that we are here for a purpose. It is our sole purpose to have been born in this time. We have roles to play that we will be and are already involved in and started and have been doing for a long time. But changing the narrative of our lives, I think, is something that is challenging. And I guess that's what you're doing as a psychotherapist and as a healer and as a mentor. That's what you're taking people on, a journey of changing that narrative. Because as much as we can have this positive belief about who we are and what we're doing here, there's an awful lot of people, a lot of women who have a completely opposite view of, a very unhappy view of why they're here and what their narrative is. So would you like to add something on that about the importance of making sure that we do write the narrative of our own lives in a positive way?
Yeah, I think I think it's, again, in this moment, it's not just about the positive, it's about really cleaning up and clearing up and being as honest, which we know, but again, I'm sure is like the more attuned we get to our shadow lands, the more we clear out the ancestral baggage that we've inherited, the more we clean up. And so that we can learn to walk in lightness, to walk in transparency, to walk in authenticity, to walk in nakedness, to walk in sacredness. But we have to have cleaned to be able to feel and live that, to walk that way. So it's the positivity is a kind of, for me, a byproduct of the work done. The work done is everybody that turns up to manage their triggers, manage their shadows, get super self-honest, and go in and clean up the wounds, this great gaping inherited wound through our own bodies. And as each one of us cleans that, then that goes into the collective matrix, which is crumbling. Because every time you find a place inside you, you find your, I don't know, your inner bitch, or you're in a manipulator, or you're in an insecurity, or whatever. Every time we nurture and love that part back and we find peace, we collect the pieces as we start to soul incarnate, soul infuse. That's the kind of narrative I'm very interested in working with people. All my work, my personal work, is what we've said this evening. How does our individual lives connect to the whole? How are we in right relationship? How are we in harmlessness? How are we in these very poignant states of being, which isn't holier than thou? It isn't any kind of extremeness. It's just coming from a place of authentic disclosure.
I think that's powerful, and I love those words, authentic disclosure. And that also what you were saying about sort of being deeply honest with yourself,
Yeah.
because it's very easy, and I've certainly done it over the years, to live in a state of illusion and denial. I did it in my marriage for long enough years till I realized that it was time to say, this isn't working.
But that's
And
what we've been fed, my sweet. We were fed that. We were fed, you know, keep calm and carry on and put on some high heels and keep going and be funny and be this and that. We were fed. Nobody said it's okay. Well, for some people here, they might have, but I certainly wasn't. I was brought up in a high level of glamour and intrigue and drama. I mean, incredible in one respect, but absolutely, you know, so soulless, because it was
yeah,
all about image. It was all about pretending. It was all about, um, you know, building yourself up to be something. Um, and all this can't sustain. So whether we're doing the work or not, it just can't sustain, because this is not the time for falsehood. This is
it actually hits into that. It makes me think that there I was, a PR in the fashion business, creating the illusion that that's the way it was supposed to be, and then ending up being a character, supposedly, or inspiring a character that takes the Mickey out of the whole thing in a successful TV show. Yes, I learned about illusion, but
and the lack of heart. You know, when you're saying that, you know, in my early days, I was a model, you know, and to go out, you know, literally, I was so insecure. I'd probably have to change 6 times before I got downstairs, because I was fed that the only way to get brownie points, I don't know, was to be beautiful or to be desired or to be something. There was such a lack of deeper knowledge and understanding. So that's my love and joy, constantly to work with people to help us come back. You know, in biodynamic psychology, we talk about the primary personality, which is your state of innocence, your state of naturalness, your state of trust. And that what happens to all of us as we get abrupted from that place and we come into these secondary adaptives, which then can kill the primary. So I'm always looking to try my best to get back to that age of innocence and naturalness and authenticity.
which is
You
why
know,
it's
we
lovely
don't
to be
have to
around babies when they're still in that. I
have.
went for a swim the other day, and I just came to the tail end of this class of babies in the swimming pool, and there was sort of about a dozen of these gorgeous, gorgeous little chubby 6-month-old babies. I just wanted to just cuddle them all and get in touch with our own innocence and our own
Yeah,
inner child.
yeah.
And that's absolutely beautiful. And I think we've talked about a lot of the stuff that I thought I wanted to talk about. Reaching a place of resolution, peace, and newfound joy is what we've talked about. And I believe, and I'm sure you do, that it is possible to move to a place of joy, even within the crazy world that we live in, even within
Totally.
um, the news, that those of us who do watch the news, we try to get bored in every day, or even with all the nonsense that's going on, we can reach that place of pure, unadulterated, authentic joy.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Joy and pleasure. You know, that life can, when we've again decalcified and taken away all those hard lines, that we return to the natural pleasure zones and the sensuality and being in touch with our bodies and the flowers and, you know, everything. It starts to become in a way Edenic, which is again our natural state of consciousness.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. I was listening, and at the same time, people were writing things up all the time that I just wanted to. So, and love, says Carol Carr, and love.
Absolutely, and you absolutely, Carol Carr, completely 1000%. That is love, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is
Pleasure,
love.
joy, love. It's all the higher frequencies when we come out of fear and guilt and all these other qualities that is not our blueprint.
Yes, love over fear, says Anna
Yeah,
Tosca.
lovely,
And
and
we can have it, and we deserve it, and
well,
it
we
is not
are it.
defeat.
We
Yes,
are it. It's the return home.
it is the return home. I feel very blessed that I was born in this particular period of time to be the age I am now. I was 73 on Friday.
Looking
I'm
amazing.
not saying it for compliments, but I'm just
No, but you are looking incredible, and you are incredible. The sexiest 73-year-old in town.
Thank you very much. Well, I believe that we can be sexy at all ages, and so it's another thing about society, you know, being ageist. It's so, you know, there was talking to another friend of mine who's a high-profile presenter who has had a number of lovers who are much younger, and why not, and has been totally attacked by it in the media. And I was thinking, why? And I when I became divorced and I was in my early 50s, I had a series of young lovers, and I'm thrilled that I had that opportunity, to be honest. And I was just thinking, what is it that women are not supposed to do after a certain age? What, not just sex, not just having a young lover, but generally that sort of the way the media puts it out, that we become invisible, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever it is, not of use to society as it is in some tribes. And yet we are in our most powerful time. I mean, that menopause and post-menopause is our most powerful time. It's when our brains work, clearly, because we're not getting every month all our hormones spinning around. And I'm very, very much into sexy older women. I'm not into them in I intend to have sex with.
Okay, the secret's out now.
Oh yeah, exactly. But I do think that women of all ages. I saw a lovely bit of music being played by Peggy Seeger the other day, who's a folk singer that was married to Pete Seeger, I think, years ago, and she's 81, and she's got a new album out, and it's all about sexy older women. And I said, yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, that's rewriting the story, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Oh. Manetta's reminded me of something that I said years ago, which is, at a certain age you either become the nurse or the person. Well, we've moved on from that one. My cynicism of previous times, but yeah, the nurse or the person. We can get over that. Anyway, so and also I had a saying here, powerful, and when we are powerful, others want to dim our light, and it's possible, and it's about not allowing that to happen. Not allowing.
That's so sad, isn't it? That's a situation, you know, what was that, you know, well, it's the whole Nelson Mandela as well, that, you know, we're frightened of our own light. But, you know, that comes from the pain body, you know, the whole pain body that can't allow life to enjoy itself. The pain body that says, that criticizes, the pain body that judges, the pain body that says you can't have it, or you stole this, or you know, all this my control, and anti-life, anti the naturalness of living a healthy, abundant, enough for everyone, life supporting life, kindness. It's a new language, even though it's not, it's inherent, but it's a new language, you know. These are the languages we need. I mean, I talk about the codes, but these are the languages that we need to harness, so that we don't stand for that anymore. Because it's that world where everybody's still eating everybody else's glory, pain, money, whatever it is, it's not okay.
No, it's not okay. It's not okay. And we will go forward, and I will just send it out there that if anybody would like to ask Fiona any questions or make any comments, although you have been doing it all the way through, Alexis talks about societal paradigm shift is needed, and it certainly is. And Phobo is saying she agrees that women women as men don't have the same shame put on them, which is also true. And and Phobo says that her son thought she was making it up when she told him my age. Yay. So it's a new generation of wise women, and I'm just thrilled to have you in my life, to be my friend. And you have these wonderful retreats that you do down here in Somerset, which people can find out about. I also do them, and so we have even talked about perhaps doing something
No, we're
together.
definitely going to do that, definitely.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. So thank you so much, because I know it's a busy weekend for you, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with our lovely tribe here. And I just send you my blessings and love. And before I come offline, I just wanted to do a couple of just little seed announcements, which is, if I may. So on Monday, I am back after requests to start doing my Facebook Lives on the Seed Women with Lynne Franks Facebook group, which I think even Fiona, you've popped in once or twice, I believe.
Yes, no, I want to do it.
And so I'm back at 6:30 on Monday night on Facebook Live again. I just had a couple of weeks rest and I'm ready to go. And I just sort of, it's amazing how you can have this conversation with people texting and just being aware and answering and being present. So, you know, that's the world we live in. So I'm back on Monday. As I said, I've interviewed the fantastic Stella Creasy MP, feminist, radical feminist and campaigner, and that's going to be my next podcast. It's out 3rd of May, and we are going to be doing a Power of 7 retreat, and this hasn't been announced yet, in Somerset, in Glastonbury, at the Earth Spirit Centre, where I held a couple before. I don't know if you've ever been there, it's beautiful. So we're holding a wonderful Power of 7 retreat in July from the 14th to the 16th, and Louise, who was on this call and hopefully still is, Louise Allen, is doing a retreat in Glastonbury, which is sold out. She's been planning for 2 years and keeps having to change the dates that same week. So she's going to have a lot of her Rhythm of Beauty tribe down when we're all going to be together, and it's going to be a fantastic time. And perhaps, Fiona, if you've got time, if we have some of the wonderful women staying here, you'll pop in and say hi as well.
Wonderful.
It's going to be a great summer. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm enjoying, as I'm sure we all are, this shift in weather, the sun, the earth, Mother Nature. Give blessings and blessings to everybody for being here. And I know that you've all enjoyed yourselves. So thank you all for coming in again. Huge thank you to Fiona for being here and sharing this lovely evening with us. So God bless you, my darling. And we'll see each other soon. And I'll end the broadcast and send love to everybody, and probably see a lot of you on Monday, I guess.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you, Lynne, sweetheart. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been lovely. And I'll end the broadcast now. So see you next time in a month's time. Bye.